Most of the people here, most of you know that I work with the ancient crystal skulls, and that story goes way back. I actually started working with them probably 35 years ago. And the first experience I had with the ancient skulls, I was called into a big week-long conference of gathering of ancient crystal skulls, and the one lady whose father owned Ferrari, she had 6 of the ancient crystal skulls. And I was the only one there doing readings and doing the healing work for the entire week. And at the end of the week, she had said to me, I've heard amazing things about your readings and about the healing work that you're doing. Would you like to be my guest to work with one of the ancient skulls? Which they were charging $1 a minute to meditate with them or to work with them. And so I looked around on the table, and the skulls, one of them's very famous. It's called E.T. And the book, Mysteries of the Crystal Skulls Revealed, was based on E.T. But there was another skull there that was rose quartz. And the rose quartz was getting my attention. And everything about the rose quartz, it was this big, beautiful piece of rose quartz, but the eyes were crooked, the mouth was crooked. And I was trying to figure out what was going on with this. And it just intrigued me to see such a beautiful stone, and yet the carving was all off. And so when I meditated with it afterwards, I said to the caretaker of the skulls, I would like to take somebody here into that same meditation I was just in with the skull. And she said, would you do me, Jeff? And I said, sure. And as soon as she put her hands on the skull, I had her drop her breath, and I said to her, would you still love me if I was deformed? What do humans know about love? And it touched her so deeply, because those were the same words that Nick Nusserini had said to her that she had never said to anybody else. And he had passed away a few weeks after making the book, co-authoring the book. And she asked me at that time if I would travel with her and if I'd speak on the energies of the skulls, because the small group, it was the archaeologist, it was her, who she could talk about the experience she had seen with the skulls, but they wanted somebody else to talk about the energies of the skulls. And what do we know about love? What do we know about loving ourselves? And there's so many hidden intricacies in love. I mean, there's books out. One of the books talks about never taking anything personal. But how do we learn to love ourselves? How do we learn what that really means? Most of us in relationships, we forget the art of love. We forget and let fear, let jealousy, let envy become a part of that. And fear is just the opposite of love itself. If you have enough self-love, then how is it possible that you could go into a fear-based energy? If you can learn to love yourself enough, you can learn to empower yourself in life. Yet, how do we learn to love ourselves, and how do we define ourselves? When you start thinking about yourself, we have so many intricate parts because we have our subconscious mind. We have our physical self, and then we have our higher consciousness. And the subconscious mind sees the world completely different than we do. You hear me a lot of times in the different classes saying that you are just life. You're not the story of your life. You're not the events that take place in your life. You are life. when we think like that, it creates a oneness. It's through that oneness that the subconscious mind operates. But the subconscious mind's behavior is a 4-year-old, 5-year-old child. And so to get the cooperation of the subconscious mind, there are different things that we can do to teach our subconscious mind. But we have to remember, next week we're going to have a class on pendulums, I believe. And that class is going to enhance what you learned today. Still a free class. I'm not going to charge you double. This isn't a trap class where we're doing a bait and switch thing for you. But the subconscious mind behaving like a 5-year-old child and seeing life differently than we do. If we are just life, and that's our true essence, then that means everybody around us is just life. That means that there is nobody greater than. That means there's nobody less than. That is one of the first steps of finding our way back into being in balance. So if I'm angry at somebody over here, my subconscious mind is going to see me as being angry at myself. Well, how does that perpetuate me loving myself? In order to build those perimeters of self-love, I have to also be giving unconditional love. And the more that you are caring about others, the more that you're giving that love unconditionally, the more it's feeding back to yourself. If you look in your hands, if you see this M in my hand, it's in both hands. That particular mark, for those who have had readings from me, you'll see me look at your hands sometimes. Or if your hands feel moist all the time, you've got that kind of heat in your hands. Those are the marks and the tendencies that you would feel if you are empathic. Which, if you have empathy, that means you also have healing energies. That means that you have a big heart. What do people do and what do people need with big heart? For one, they're going to attract people to them that are going to come up and constantly be wanting to tell them their problems. You begin to feel like you're the target in the room. And on the other side of that equation, typically, you're going to find yourself in relationships that seem to be out of balance. And even though you're filled with love, the one who loves the least always controls the relationship. How many times will you find yourself going through hoops because somebody doesn't love themselves enough that they're worried about what you're doing? They're jealous, they're envious, they're making you jump through hoops. And when that pathway starts, I don't care how many paths, how many hoops you jump through, you're never going to have enough. They'll just keep reappearing and being bigger. And the control factor is going to grow bigger. And that is one of the examples of lacking self-love. So when we lack self-love, we go to a fear-based energy. Going back to the subconscious mind and the act of a 5-year-old child, if you can remember when you were 5 years old or thereabouts, think about your first disappointment with a parent or your first disappointment in a relationship or with a sibling. Most of us don't start relationships at 5, but we do with our siblings and family. How long did you carry that? How hard was it for you to get over that first disappointment? I mean, we come in as this innocent child filled with love, and this inner child still exists deep within us. But it begins to put on all these filters as we grow older. It begins to be worried that it's going to be hurt, so it puts up these suits of armor to protect ourselves. A lot of the family unit has been lost. A lot of learning what love actually is has been lost. We live in such a high-tech society. We live where somebody just wrote a book about throwing away their iPhone. They were disconnecting from the grid because they found out that they purposely will follow what you're doing on your phone, what you're looking at, and they try to create a pattern to where it becomes more addictive to you. So they wrote a book on this. So we don't have that communication one-on-one. We don't sit there and talk to people. We lose the aspect of giving love. We're so worried about what's going to happen in the world, we're following everything else, and it gets so much of our attention that we forget to take the time. Yet everything about us goes out of balance the minute we start losing that self-love. And if you can think about that first disappointment, that first disappointment was a part of ourself also. The subconscious mind is not fooled by the illusion of the separation that's created by ego. And so it sees all of us as just being one, and it sees all of us as working together and a part of this one dream. But it goes even deeper than that, because we were given free will. And through the act of free will, we can knowingly do something that we know is wrong, but it's an easier way or something. The easiest path is not always the right path to take. And the consequences sometimes are not what you want them to be. To walk with the integrity, to walk with that consciousness of caring about the people around you, also brings your attention back to caring about yourself. The reflections of the things that we do teach our subconscious how to accept love, how to love ourselves. How many of us, somebody does something nice for us and we're saying, oh no, you don't need to do that. We do it every day. Go to a restaurant and the other person offers to pick up the bill and we're saying, no, I'll take care of it. What am I just saying? What did I really just say? Did I just say to my subconscious mind that, no, I'm not worthy? Did I just take the energy away from somebody else who was doing something nice? Because I like doing things that are nice for people. I like picking up the bill. Maybe they like it too. And so instead, if we can just learn to say thank you and appreciate it, it might resonate on a deeper level within our consciousness, to where we begin to feel a little bit differently about ourselves. And each little thing that we do every day can add to that momentum. You keep doing those little things and they start becoming the mountain that moves you forward, that takes you out of that fear-based energy. And the opposite of love is fear. Every time we tell somebody, no, they don't need to do that for us, we're telling our subconscious mind, no, I'm not worthy. And at the same time, the subconscious mind's going to have its own quirks, because if I do something I know to be wrong, there are these three different parts. There's my higher consciousness, there's my physical self, and then there's my subconscious self. And the subconscious self can become my own worst enemy. When I do something wrong and the subconscious mind sees that, that's this 5-year-old child. And I asked you earlier how long you're going to hold on to something when you were 5 years old. And it goes into a much greater picture, because all of our manifestation, we can read these books on law of attraction, we can read these books on The Secret, we can learn how to manifest things. But with the Huna that I teach and I've studied, the subconscious mind is the part of us that does every bit of the work. It's our subconscious mind that connects with others when we're doing readings. It's the subconscious mind that connects when we're doing healing work. It's the subconscious mind that goes out of body when we're dreaming. I like to compare the subconscious mind to the Atlanta airport. If you're going to go anywhere in the world, you have to go through there first. Pretty much. So the subconscious mind's that part of us that's actually creating. It's actually bringing things to us. While we do the prayers with the physical self and ask the higher self to give us this higher energy of creation, because the higher self carries that higher energy. The energy that it carries in Huna terms we call Mauna Loa, which Mauna Loa is volcanic energy. So you've got this high volume of energy above you. You've got the physical self, but if the subconscious mind is doing all of the work, then it's the subconscious mind that's running up to the higher self and saying, look, we want to get this energy, we want to create this, we're doing these prayers, we're seeing me walking out of the bank carrying wheelbarrows full of money, and so we want the higher self to cooperate. But if we have a mediator going back and forth, the subconscious mind, this 5-year-old child, it may say no. Do something you know to be wrong, and the subconscious mind can hang on to it. You've heard the expression, there are no accidents in the universe. To figure out what that really means, I mean, you have to look at it and dissect it. And if we can understand that the subconscious mind is a big part of our being, then we get into a car 10 times a day. It becomes an unconscious thought or a subconscious thought. But that 10th time we go to get into the car, all of a sudden we bang our head. Was that an accident? Or did the subconscious mind just find some kind of way of punishing me? If it's going to do that, then what about these prayers that I'm asking to bring into my life? The abundance, the love, the healing. And the subconscious mind can say no. You don't deserve it. It's holding on to these things. That's why next week in the pendulum class we're going to actually be doing some releases for these things, to where we can really learn to step up and empower ourselves. The class today is designed so that you have an understanding of how this energy is working and what we can do to increase our own self-love. Learning to master over ourselves, but we really want to master over all three parts of ourself. We want to learn the thought process, or lack of the subconscious mind, how it's affecting us. How many of us feel like we love ourselves? Do we do things to empower that? Have you ever felt like something wasn't working right for you and tried to narrow it down to why? Those little simple things we do, the things that we do every day, are a constant variable. That's our constant thought. When we do something to empower ourselves, when we do something to say, I love myself, I deserve good things in my life, then we want to be careful that we're not limited in our thought process through how we see ourselves. How I see myself, my ego. If I ask somebody to describe themselves to me, that would be nothing more than ego. Anything that they say that's short of just saying, I'm just life. I'm here in this moment. What happens when we get into relationships? We begin to wonder if this is the right one. Is this going to last forever? What if it wasn't meant to last forever? What if it was just meant to be there for that short time? Have you created your own disappointment through desire? Why wouldn't you just be happy in the moment you're in? Instead of the projection of things that are going to cause problems for both people involved. Learning all of these little intricacies, staying in the moment, being love, giving love, is really our key to our own comfort. There's nobody else out there that can affect us in any way, shape, or form without our permission. We can blame other people for everything we want to blame them for. But when we look at the underneath scenario, the truth is we're giving away our power. The minute we let somebody else affect how we think, how we feel, we're just simply giving away our power. To hold that power of loving yourself can be a key to overcoming those kind of obstacles in your life. To walk in your personal truth is a key to holding on to that power. Next time we feel like we're upset with somebody, even those things that we carry today, is there somebody out there we're upset with? Is there somebody out there we're mad at? Now ask yourself how it's affecting you. Is it worth holding on to? How much power do you want to give away? When the key to your own happiness is love. The key to your own happiness starts with loving yourself. And I come back to that ancient crystal skull that said to me, would you still love me if I was deformed? The fact that it was carved crooked, what do we know about love? And the way it was presented, it actually said, what do humans really know about love? So that makes me question where these ancient skulls started appearing from. There's so much we can learn every day. There's so much we can empower ourselves with. If we're doing prayers to bring things into our life and it's just simply not working, check the self-love. Check and see if that's not the part of yourself that's missing. Check to see how you feel about yourself. Do you describe yourself as somebody who's always sick? Do you describe yourself as somebody who's never been good in relationships? Somebody who's never been good with money? Do you see it being the struggle, bringing love into your life? Do you see it being the struggle to bring prosperity into your life? Reaching into your core and bringing out that self-love, bringing out that I deserve factor, and changing your view of yourself is paramount to changing your life. You're here today, so you came here to learn more about love. So evidently, we're searching for something. Can we find that something deep within ourselves? Can we begin to understand how we carry these different energies and even those subtle thoughts, how they're affecting us every day? How they say, I don't love myself. Changing the little things in our thought process. The things we do in small amounts, we'll begin to do in large amounts. You've heard the old saying, there's no such thing as being a little bit crooked. Making excuses for others or making excuses for ourselves. We always have to remember that things people do in small amounts, they'll begin to do in large amounts. And that's especially true with the self-love because it's almost contagious. It seems like every step of evolution that we make towards loving ourselves, it's almost hard to go back to that beginning step. It's like the more you feed into it and the more you understand it and the more you begin to work with it, the more your awareness will grow and the faster you'll cut things off when they start to go down a path that lacks self-love. Your attention will come to it a lot quicker that you're starting to feel uncomfortable, that you're starting to feel out of balance. What's wrong here? It's like everybody in here who had that M in their hand or had those warm hands. Bringing the attention back to loving myself and setting those boundaries. You know, if you have that kind of energy, you're always wanting to help others. But at what point are you enabling others? So I draw boundaries. A lot of times I'll just figure out that I'm not going to do the work for other people. I can point a direction, but the more work that I wind up doing, the less they have to do for themselves, so that means the less learning they're going to have through the process. I have people every day that come to me as a reader and ask me who I should be with, which rock should I buy. At what point am I just stealing their power by making those kind of choices for them? And if they have free will, that's given to us by the Creator. Who am I to tell somebody something different than telling them to honor their free will? What do they feel? What is it they want? How much power do we want to give away, and at what point does that power that we're giving away begin to erode that love within ourselves, for ourselves? One of the things, if you've got those hot hands, that I will give you a clue, is in relationships, when you have those healing energies, it becomes more important to ask yourself what you don't want in a relationship. That can be with friends, family, or anyone else. At what point does it become disempowering? At what point are you letting it push you off center? And then how do you maintain that feeling of loving yourself? And it's a fine line between creating those feelings of guilt within us. Oh, I wish I could help that person. Well, the way to help them is to make them do the work themselves. Point the direction, but draw your boundary to where you're not falling out of balance yourself. And that speaks volumes on how much you love yourself. When you begin to let others walk over you, or you begin to try to do so much of the work for somebody else, you're not helping them, you're just enabling them. I think that one person's freedom ends where another person's begins. One person's responsibilities end where another person's begins. And so if we can look at it as, how can I help them? What is it I can give them? Teach them without moving beyond that boundary of their responsibility, that I'll find myself able to hold my own love and respect for myself. Does anybody have any questions at this time? So if I have Amanda pass out a test, everybody in here would ace that test? Self-love is such a tricky thing, and there's so many undercurrents that go on with it. Learning those little nuances, learning how to love ourselves, learning how to say thank you. If we have enough self-love, if we see something that we want to buy, oh, I really like this shirt. I think I want to get that shirt. And then all of a sudden the self-love comes out and the fear factor, well, if I buy that shirt, I may be short somewhere else. And there's a certain amount of intelligence that you have to use being responsible so that you don't wind up punishing yourself, but at the same time, you also want to reward yourself. You don't want to go around beating yourself up afterwards that you spent more than you really wanted to. But if you decide to love yourself enough to get that, let it in there. Don't keep second guessing yourself to the point of you feeling like you don't deserve. Make your yeses yes and your no's no. And life becomes a lot simpler. The minute we start second guessing ourselves, we begin to lose our balance. And yet all of us will do that. But just being aware that we do that will bring your attention to it, so you're not so apt to do it in the future. Everything we do in life that we want to create cannot be created unless we have that I deserve. In order to have that I deserve, we have to have that love for ourselves. We can do all the empowerments we want, but if we feel I don't deserve it, then we just push it away. And those undercurrents of the subconscious mind, those undercurrents of not feeling worthy, the things that we tell ourselves every day, are affecting our total welfare. They're affecting our total happiness. So within each of us, we really need to look at what it is that I want in my life to be happy. Not what other people say that I want. But where do you want your life to go from here? Is that a question that we never ask ourselves? Where do I want my life to go from here? What would I like to see next? And the bigger question that comes back to self-love, do I feel like I deserve that? Today I've created a lot of questions for you. A lot of things you can think about and ask yourself why you did this, why you did that. And you'll have the tools to see what you're actually creating, what it is you're actually doing from the subconscious mind perspective. Even our words have so much importance. Our thoughts about ourselves. Does anybody have any questions?
There are processes for meditatively going inside and connecting with the inner child and nurturing it, letting it know that it's loved and that type of thing. Do you see actual value in that, or is that more of an exercise in futility because the subconscious isn't going to listen to the ego kind of thing?
When we meditate, the ego gets killed. And the ego doesn't want to die. The ego is not egotistical, but how we see ourselves. We'll go to meditate and our nose will start itching. The ego is trying to get us out of that state of losing control. It's like this control freak that's sitting there saying, no, I don't want to die. And yet the more that we empty out, the less power the ego has. And when we do the meditations here, another thing that comes back to self-love is every chakra. We'll go through every chakra, and the root chakra will hold the energy of abandonment. It will hold the energy of feeling alone. That's not the truth. That's the illusion. Because if we're all just life, so is all in nature around us. How can we ever be alone? Move up to the navel chakra, and that's a real important chakra for self-love. The navel chakra holds the energy of not feeling good enough about ourselves. Whether it's the words of somebody in the past saying your voice isn't good enough, you don't draw good enough, I'm better than you. That energy will sit there in our navel chakra. And if we wear too much of other people's energy, we'll begin to put on weight without realizing why. Because we're taking on other people's energy. The inward mirror of that chakra being out of balance is going to affect our digestion. It's going to affect our stomach energy. If you listen to a holistic doctor, they'll tell you that everything's about gut health, and it really is. How we process our food, how we digest it, what foods we decide to take in affect our overall health. On the outward appearance, it's how we digest our life. The minute we don't have that feeling of, I love myself, I've always been good enough, replacing with unconditional love that energy of holding on to, and anyone that's ever taken art also knows that they're going to be their own worst critic. You'll see things in a picture or a piece of art that you're doing, and we let go of that when we can bring in that unconditional love and knowing that we're perfect in who we are. When that chakra becomes back in harmony, then it's also going to balance our outer life. If I said to you that the outward reflection is how we're digesting our life, if we have it digesting improperly, if we're not seeing those things clearly that come back to loving ourselves, then everything becomes askewed. And of course, you go up the other chakras, and every one of them is going to have an effect based on loving ourselves. That's why almost every meditation I go through and do a little bit of chakra work, sometimes more than others, because we want to have that balanced system. We want to be balanced in our self-love, and it does have a lot to do with meditating and letting go of stuff, losing the ego. The ego can take us on trips we don't want to go on if we let it, if we give our power away to it. That's a good question, Richard. I probably should have repeated it, being as I got a mic on. I had somebody in one of the other classes watching the film later, and they said that they would have liked to have known what the audience said, or what somebody said that was in the class. Anybody else have any questions? We're getting pretty close to our time, another 12, 13 minutes. After that, I charge double for questions. Class is free, but we'll figure out a way to make something. We deserve it. You had a question?
Do you have do you feel like when people start to love themselves and set boundaries that they tend to find themselves really lonely?
No, I just said that loneliness, emptiness, of being alone, separation, feeling deserted or abandoned are all an illusion. When you fill up with that unconditional love, when you're giving that to others around you, it balances your own energy enough to where it's almost impossible to feel alone. If we put ourselves in that place of service and yet hold that energy, hold our love for ourselves, let others feel the warmth of your love, your caring, but keep the love for yourself, then it's hard to feel alone. It's hard to, when you're helping so many others and in that place of just giving unconditional love. And, you know, unconditional love is hard to describe because all of us have thought. And I can think that I would like to see you doing this, and I think it would be wonderful, and I'm going to send you this unconditional love with that vision of you doing this, and I can't separate myself from that vision, then I'm not giving you unconditional love. It has an attachment coming with it. When I do healing work, it's never me. It's what's coming through me. And the end result is also not my creation. I don't pretend to know somebody else's karma. I don't pretend to want to know what their future. I can tell them the possibilities of their future. I can look at the cards and tell you what I think you're going to create right now by what you're doing in this moment. But by no stretch of the imagination is it carved in stone. And the minute a reader thinks what they're telling somebody is carved in stone, they've really given up the gift to be more egotistical. To be in that place of service, I would say to you, this is what you're creating right now. This is what the cards are showing happen, or what I'm visualizing seeing happen. Is that what you want to happen? If not, then how would you change your energy to make it be what it is you want it to be? By giving you those tools, then you can take power over your life. You're no longer at random if you take the responsibility. If you want to blame others or you want to blame situations, then you're already giving away control. But the minute you ask yourself what I can do to make this what I want it to be, and then it intertwines with that self-love, and you can begin to create it as you want to, figuring out those patterns of self-love that would help you to empower you to be and have the life you want to have. Did that answer your question? Or was...
I think I meant it in like a different type of way. Like, I don't feel like anybody's abandoned me. It's more like the boundaries I set. I feel like a lot of times you realize when you start setting those boundaries that you've spent a lifetime surrounding yourself with people that are interested only in crossing the boundaries. And so it's your choice to treat yourself better and step away. You find yourself lonely even though you wouldn't change it.
You and I are going through very similar things, and I know what you're going through, but I feel like as I continue to love myself, people are good. I'm manifesting people to come into my life that don't cross the boundaries and that love me for me. And I've already, I mean, it happened so quick, it was kind of like, okay, that's kind of cool. But there are lonely times, but as those times are lonely, I'm like, oh, this is nice. You know, I've got my peace.
Same thing, like, oh good, I go between, like,
Yeah.
I love this, I'm so happy, I'm satisfied with this, and content, and then other times I'm like,
Yeah, but as soon as you feel that way, bring the self, as soon as your thought goes there, bring in that self-love back. I love myself, I deserve this time, I deserve peace, and more and more, and as you'll find yourself putting yourself out there more, so it's kind of unique.
That's hard to do.
Yeah,
The
we'll talk later.
the self-empowerment that comes to you through loving yourself,
Yeah.
you know, with what you're saying, because I'm accustomed to listening to what you're saying and the words in between what you're saying, do you feel like you have to let others walk over you in order to have somebody there? And do you need them there that much?
Yeah.
And then overnight, I realized it. And I realized the lies you tell yourself because you're afraid to realize the truth or to know the truth. It's scary.
But if
to
you
think
turn
you're
up
gonna
your
have
own
them.
self-love,
But then you're angry, you know, I feel like I went through a period of being angry at all the times I was run over out of my desperation to have a network support. And so then you isolate.
see, there's an illusion in those words too.
And then when that goes away, I feel happy. I never knew it was possible to feel so content and okay with myself and just spending time with myself. But every once in a while, you just want people to share it with you. And when you look around, it's like everybody lives on the surface of life, that no one wants to dig into what things are about, and it just makes you feel very lonely.
There's an illusion in that whole sentence that you were just saying, too. Understanding the nature of anger. Anger is a mask that we put on when we feel pain. Whether that pain is created because we're upset with ourselves, that we did something and we feel bad and we got that pain and we let the anger push in, or even at somebody else. When we're angry at somebody else, really we're feeling pain, but it's the anger that masks it. If we can identify the pain, the anger will go away. And it's real easy to say, I forgive somebody else
Yeah.
when we find that pain. And that pain can also create a feeling of being alone. But when we can isolate what it is, that what is it I'm actually feeling upset about? Why am I angry?
That passed, you know,
Yeah.
that was a time that I think that the hurt and anger came from disappointment because I realized I let everything happen. That I knew all along was, you know, these friendships were not healthy, things like that. Once I let that go and realized that I've always had, you know, forgave myself.
Well, one
But
of
then
the
after that, you just feel, I guess I just need more people that,
Well, one of the things that I said to everybody here in the beginning was to look at your hands. And the empathic energy that we have, we are going to draw people to us that need healing. Even in relationships. And the more that your heart is bigger, the more you have that caring energy, the stronger the empathy is, the more you're going to draw people to you that need healing. And you're going to mistake that out of balance relationship if you don't ask yourself what it is you don't want in a relationship. What you don't want becomes more important than what it is you want. Yet all of us say, I want this, I want that. Oh, I care so much about this person. I want to see them heal, and I'm going to do everything I can to help them. I must love them. If you've already asked yourself what's not acceptable, it may be already there and present. And so you find yourself being better suited and equipped to actually help that other person when we're not caught up in the emotion, because the emotion will push us past that point to where we're wanting to do the work for them. And the minute you start down that slope, it becomes slippery. No matter what you do, they're going to need something else. And it's like that jealousy hoop. Turn up the love and the jealousy goes away, especially when it's self-love.
Does it go back to, there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely?
yeah.
And sometimes perhaps that feeling of loneliness, the lack of having other people around, is because you haven't resolved something within yourself that makes you comfortable in your own skin and being alone. Does that make sense?
It makes sense in the sense that either way is seeking identity. When you look at the people of India, the yogas, the people that go out sometimes for 20 years without anybody else around, how can they do that? And yet there's balance in there. The illusion is that we're alone. We're all life. All of nature is life. There was a point in my life where one of my girlfriends wanted me to move way out in the woods. I moved way out in the woods. And then she had kids, so she needed to go and be with the kids. And I was fine with that. I told her I own my own business. I can stay busy. Do what you need to do. If you don't go be with your kids at this time, you can regret that for a long time to come, and it doesn't seem self-empowering. Her daughters were getting ready to graduate from high school and stuff, so it was at that time period. Well, then a short time later, things just didn't work out. And so I found myself living in the woods by myself. And for about a year and a half period, I kept thinking over and over, I'm out here all by myself. How am I going to meet people? I would go into town and I'd spend a week in town because I was wholesaling the gems and minerals, and I was going from store to store. Until one day I sat down out there in the woods and I said, you know something? This is not who I am. I'm an Eagle Boy Scout. I worked with the Native Americans. I spent a lot of time in the woods. I love being in the woods. Even as a child, I would go out and spend hours in the woods. The story I'm telling myself is creating pain of feeling alone. But the minute I take the story away is also the minute I take away the feeling of separation. And even if there's nobody there, then it's time for me to be in tune with nature. It's time for me to find a deeper part of myself. And a part of that self very much should be self-love. Being content to be by myself, being content to be there in nature. It's always the illusion that we're alone. So it's not the truth at all. It's just a story we tell ourselves. And I could have perpetuated that story for years. But I ended it and everything changed in that moment. You know, you have these life-defining moments where we make a decision. And it really defines the next phase of our life. Whether it's the lessons we're learning, how we move beyond them, what we're involved in right this minute, how much of ourself is being lost through what I'm going through and experiencing in this moment. But when I let it go to just be in this moment, and this is the only moment I have, and my reality shifts to just being life, then you find this great contentment moving through you. You find this comfort that's constantly there. It takes thought process outside. It takes ego, it takes thoughts of others in order to take that away, or for us to give it away, because nobody can ever take anything from us without our permission. Yet if we sit here, we're just what the Creator wanted us to be. Every one of us is perfect to learn those lessons we were meant to learn. So how hard is it to love ourselves when we know that it's in greater hands to begin with? Yeah, we've run around throwing our hands in the air, unhappy with the situations. And to surrender is the answer in everything in life. Universal law is what you resist persists. Okay, if nobody has any questions, we ran a little long. And if you do have a question, I'm going to charge you double what I was charging you a minute ago. 2 times 0, I got to figure that one out.